I wrote a joke for this episode. Here goes. Two Bob Shaws and a Joe Haldeman went to a relativistic bar. Bob Shaw number one from 1969 says, I just finished The Palace of Eternity. I look at the Vietnam War and pan-spiritualism. It's only 221 pages. Bob Shaw number two from 1971 says, I just finished Ground Zero Man. In it, I look at the Cold War and the arms race and some other wacky characters. It's only 160 pages. Joe Haldeman from 1975 says, I just finished the Forever War. I look at the Vietnam War, the Cold War, the arms race, as well as time dilation and culture shock. My novel is only 218 pages. Down at the end of the bar, a man slams his drink on the counter and rages right out the door. Bob Shaw number one says, Who's that? Joe Haldeman says, That's Stephen King, 1978. He just finished his novel The Stand and his editor asked him to lose 400 pages. I know. Don't quit your day job. I don't have a day job. I'm retired. All right, let's take a look at these novels. The Palace of Eternity at first appears to be a military SF novel. I find that this novel is in that area where Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke is, where you don't want to reveal too much because it's just too good. What I do want to say is Bob Shaw really knows how to write. I'd like to read a portion describing the sky on the planet Mnemosyne. This is on page 8 of the novel. The heavens above Mnemosyne were unlike those of any planet he had ever visited. Many geological ages earlier, two large moons had coursed overhead, drawing closer and closer together until they had collided. Traces of that cosmic impact could be found all over the craters, but the main evidence was in the sky. A shell of lunar fragments, many of them large enough for their irregularity of outline to be visible to the naked eye, constantly drifted on the background of fainter stars, forming a curtain that reached from pole to pole. The pattern of brilliant shards never repeated itself, and adding to the spectacle was the fact that the screen was dense enough for eclipses to take place on a continuous basis. As Mnemosyne's shadow swept across the sky, groups of moonlets would pass from white right through the colors of the spectrum, vanish into blackness, then reappear to run the penumbral gamut in reverse. The total light cast was about equal to that of a normal moon, but as it was diffused, coming from every part of the sky, there were no shadows, just a faint, silvery ambience. This novel, similar to many vintage SF novels I've read, is in 3 parts. Part 1 is the humans, Part 2 is the Egons, and Part 3 is the Pithsicans. Part 2 is less than 20 pages in the middle of a 222-page novel. Despite its brevity, it is mind-blowing. Bob Shaw is the master of using the last sentence of each chapter to propel the reader forward. It contains a revelation or a hook to continue the reader's interest. As I said in my joke, this is a military SF novel, definitely influenced by the Vietnam War. Some of the technology is definitely an extension of helicopters. I do want to say that Shaw's world building and vivid prose makes this novel worth reading. I think he packs more ideas within 221 pages than most novelists do in twice that length. This novel is a very good novel, and I would reread it again. I give this novel a 9 out of 10. Next, we have the other Bob Shaw novel, Ground Zero Man. In this novel, the lead character is Lucas Hutchman, a brilliant mathematician. He develops the mathematics and schematics to be able to build a self-propagating neutron resonance machine. This machine, if you push the button, it would detonate all nuclear weapons in the world. Lucas believes he has a deterrent better than the arms race for deterring nuclear war. Things come to a head as a dirty nuclear bomb is exploded in Damascus. Lucas holds the governments of the world hostage. If they do not disarm their nuclear weapons, he will detonate them all. Quite a serious topic, and it is very interesting the way it is worked out through the novel. There are some wacky characters in this novel. Lucas's wife, Valerie, is a very needy person, and she's the type of person who wants to possess someone. She is always suspicious of other women around Lucas. Although Lucas himself seems to be deeply moral, the people around him aren't. I think this juxtaposition with a threat to the end of humanity gives a perspective on what is going on in the Cold War. Ground Zero Man starts off with an intriguing idea. What would you do if you had the power to detonate all nuclear weapons in the world? As we see this play out, and as we see the tragedy within Lucas's life, we're swept along to what may seem like an inevitable conclusion. I would give Ground Zero Man a 7 out of 10. And last we have The Forever War by Joel Haldeman. This is a very famous novel. We follow William Mandela from conscription to training to battling in a war against the Torrens. We see conflict as in war, conflict as in morality, and conflict in first contact. As Mandela and the soldiers travel to distant battles, there is a time dilation with Earth. Their time, traveling near the speed of light, is much less than the time that goes by on Earth. When they do have shore leave on Earth, hundreds of years have passed. It's a culture shock. As the war continues, we see its toll, and then it's over. Joe Haldeman served in Vietnam, and you can see that this novel would reflect what it might have felt like to return to the United States after a tour of duty. One of the interesting things about the culture shock on Earth is the development of gender and sexuality. Mandela and some of the soldiers don't recognize the world that they've come back to. This novel is definitely a classic. You've probably read this book, or if you haven't, it's on your radar. I give this novel a 10 out of 10. So, what did you think of those reviews? What did you think of my joke? Do you agree with the ratings? Let me know in the comments below.